Over the past 2 weeks, we've had presentations on the proposed rezoning plan known as Thrive Montgomery 2050. What was striking during the discussion was the reoccurring idea that Montgomery County is rapidly approaching a county that can't get anything done. One, because of overregulation, and two, because paralysis by analysis has long been the joke about Montgomery County development plans, and it only seems to be getting worse. This week, there was an op-ed in Bethesda Magazine by Charles Nussel, who complained about the lack of leadership from the county council. Just a week earlier, there was another opinion piece about lack of leadership from the county executive. Now, maybe Thrive Montgomery 2050 is being sent back for further considerations because of equity. Because the council mandated in 2020 that every piece of legislation contain a racial equity statement. But this week, Council Member Tom Hucker and Council President Gabe Albanese introduced legislation requiring climate assessments for future council actions. Really, this sounds like a script from the Twilight Zone. It means that nothing, maybe nothing, will ever get done. Mike, legislators, are famous or infamous for posturing in front of the camera. I'm sure you never did that.
Never.
But they are also for virtue signaling. Do we really need to have an environmental impact statement on every piece of legislation that comes before the council?
Well, I think the challenge is, and you raise this in your preface, is what is the bigger plan? What is the strategy? The challenge I think we have as a county right now is our economy is moribund at best. Compared to our neighbors in any direction. There's more growth throughout the entire region than there is here. And so when you're looking at what we're trying to do, we've got to be able to say, we're headed in this direction. Should we look at equity? Should we look at the environment? Certainly we should. Those are things that should be taken into account, but in some context. And when everything else is kind of just dragging along, to throw these things on top, especially when there's a perception, as you, I think, rightly articulate, that people don't think we can get things done. It takes too long to get things done. We have to overcome those things first, and then be able to say how we look at equity and how we look at the environment and how we take those things into account. But you've got to come up with a direction, and you got to move in that direction before you start layering other things on top of it.
Well, what I find challenging, and part of this was because of the two discussions we had the last 2 weeks, one with the director of planning from the Park and Planning Commission, and last week with Meredith Wellington who represents the county executive, is that the opportunity for mischief in slowing down even good ideas, grows exponentially every time you layer on one of these requirements. What happened to the common sense and good judgment that we expect from our legislators? It looks to me that we're just dumping everything onto, to the bureaucracy to come up with their little check marks and a chop sheet. We're strangling in regulation, and not enough action by the people we're electing and we're paying their salaries for to make decisions. Mark, everywhere you turn, there's a new overreach. There's a bill, they passed this bill, and God bless Craig Rice for wanting to make sure that children get a nutritious meal. But is it really the job of the restaurant? Is it really the job of the council to tell parents what they need to feed their children?
Well, this is obviously a kind of a collectivist fantasy of sort of top-down mandates to the way people ought to eat. It's fascinating because if you actually look at the specifics of both the nutrition and the science behind what's being mandated is up for grabs. It assumes that every kid is in the same position and at risk of becoming obese, and that's certainly not true. It also makes assumptions about whole milk, which the science, you can debate that. It says whole milk is bad. Well, that's not necessarily always true for every kid. But the top-down nature of this is really insulting to people. And I would argue at the end of the day, it's also politically disastrous for the county, because it really will end up driving away from our area to Virginia or Howard or wherever, people who want to make their own decisions and don't want to live this way.
Well, Mike, I mean, one of the things that I find is that, business people aren't stupid. They're going to find ways to get around this mandate. One of the easiest ways is to don't offer children menus. Just offer a full menu for everyone, and then the parents are going to pay more. This just seems insane, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but I think this really gets back to, where are we going? What's the direction in which we're heading? Where is Montgomery County? Where are we today? Where do we want to be? And I think if you can at least point to some direction we're going in, and whether it's the council that can do that, I think personally it's difficult for a legislature to take that leadership role. I think it really has to come from an executive position, but right now we haven't had that for a while. And so as a result, we're just doing stuff. And when you just do stuff, people are just coming up with things to do. And I think that's what you see. And I just think, I've read so many analyses over the last few months of, even we look at biotech. Biotech has obviously got a shot in the arm in the reaction to COVID and the things that we've done here in the county. And yet we still lag so much further behind Cambridge and Boston and in California. And rather than kind of think about how do we really accelerate this and how do we compete, we're so busy being happy that something good is happening that we're not really thinking about the strategy about how to leverage that and grow that forward. And I think that's our biggest challenge right now. There just isn't a direction. We're just doing things.
Well, there also doesn't seem to be a spirit of cooperation working with the private sector. I mean, every time,
we haven't had that in 25 years.
Well, maybe 50 years.
Maybe.
But the idea is that those other jurisdictions that you listed in your answer just a minute ago, they seem to have a better working cooperation with the private sector because they target different sectors for growth, and they're willing to work with them. Every time we seem to offer those things, and I think Ike Leggett tried to do that during his administration, it gets stymied. It gets shot down, or somebody files a lawsuit.
Private sector is not woven into the fabric of Montgomery County. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's just so many people who are in elected positions have never even had experience in the private sector. So they don't know what that means. They don't know what that is. And there's a suspicion and a skepticism of everything that's proposed from the private sector, which I think is really unfortunate for our community, but is a truism and has been for a long time.
So our economic development strategy, I guess going back at least 50 years, has been very simple. Federal government, that our proximity to federal government first as a bedroom community for government workers, but then as a bedroom community, but also location for the government contractors that have sort of become the dominant employers over the last 20, 30 years. That's been our strategy. And query whether or not that's going to be able to be maintained in an environment where people can work remotely or jobs can be moved to other locations. And that's something that Montgomery County really has not faced up to.
Not at all.
Well,
and
but
it's interesting.
It's worse than that, Mark. And it's not just, is the government going to decide to locate in Prince George's County or Montgomery County or the suburbs of Virginia? It's the related companies that do business with the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I don't know of any large major consulting company that is headquartered here in Montgomery County. They're all, the MITRE is over in Virginia. RAND Corporation is in Virginia. Mantech is in Virginia. They're all located in Virginia. They're deciding that they don't want to be in the state of Maryland. That's a huge problem for us, and we've got to recognize it. And unfortunately, we don't have a positive local government, either Prince George's County or Montgomery County, that is taking the lead on this.
No, I mean, it's been a challenge. It continues to be a challenge, and we have to. One of the things, and where this is going to be a real problem, is going to be we've been recession-proof because of our ability to rely on the federal government. As we recover from each recession, we get closer and closer to not being recession proof. And it's kind of the boiling frog syndrome. And at some point, we're not going to be able to recover in a way that we always have. And so, but by the time we get to that point, it's going to be too late. And I don't want to say the sky is falling. We just need to be aware of these things and make better decisions.
Look, I'm right across from the old White Flint Shopping Center. Now, when the director of planning was on, she revealed that the owners of that site are pulling back on their development plans because they don't believe there's enough demand for the office space and even the residential space that was planned for that project. You know, something's got to give. We got to find a way to stimulate growth in Montgomery County, and it's got to come, I think, from the executive level.